Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Teresa Haley with Haley & Associates and Visions 1908. We are here today to simply provide some updates to you and to talk about the 1908 race riot. Today is the commemoration 116 years later. What's happening in Sangamon County? What's happening in Springfield? As you know, Springfield was the place that led to the start of the NAACP as we know it today because of that race riot. But at this time, I'd like to bring up Attorney Ben Crump to provide us with some updates. Attorney Crump.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Haley. I want to make sure Mr. Wilburn can be seen here. Good afternoon. I'm Attorney Ben Crump along with Attorney Paul Grink, Attorney Nala Jackson, Attorney Hightower, and we also have present with us a great civil rights lawyer, Tony Ramanucci, who also served as co-counsel for the family of George Floyd and Tyree Nichols and their tragic demise at the hands of law enforcement. And we're going to talk about just a few things because it's still very emotional and a lot of things are going on right now. Number one, this is our first time responding. We got all your requests about the retirement of Sheriff Jack Campbell. And after I talked with you and Attorney Ramanucci talked with you, you will hear from Uncle Ray Massey, Donna's brother, Sonya's uncle, as well as her father, Mr. James Wilburn. Also present with us are Malachi and Summer, her children, who won't be talking about the sheriff's retirement or any of those things. And quite frankly, as we put in our statement, the family takes the sheriff's proclamation that he still is going to try to help heal the community. And as he told the family, or made statements before, that he wants to make sure that the Sonya Massey's family gets justice. The family wants to take him at his word that he will continue to help heal the community and help get justice for Sonya Massey. Also, there are questions, I guess, that have been asked about Sonya Massey's proposed legislation. I know Senator Turner had talked at a press conference before about trying to have a Sonya Massey law. We know that Governor Pritzker said that if there was good legislation presented to him in the name of Sonya Massey and the family approved, that he would be willing to sign. I just want to take a moment to thank Governor Pritzker for his leadership in this matter. He was very sensitive when he met with the family of Sonya Massey. He said that he wanted to make sure that there was justice and accountability for all citizens of the state of Illinois, and that Sonya Massey and her family would be no exception. And he has lived up to that commitment to the family of saying that we're going to keep pushing for justice and accountability. So we thank you, Governor Pritzker, and Lieutenant Governor, for demonstrating very effective leadership in the wake of this crisis. At this time, that legislation, what we talk about, is something that's going to be important, because it will not just affect Sonya Massey's family, but it will affect all the citizens. And I know Attorney Ramanucci and I helped work on the language for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that passed in several states, but is sitting in purgatory up at the United States Congress while we continue to see innocent American citizens killed unjustly. But that doesn't mean that we don't continue to make sure that we get progress at any step we can. So we're going to try to do that again in the name of Sonya Massey, and that hopefully will occur here in the state of Illinois, and hopefully it could go to the United States Congress and be integrated into the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So with that, I'm going to have my great co-counsel on so many cases, a great civil rights lawyer, Attorney Tony Romanucci, who hails out of Chicago, Illinois, come and talk about the legislative language that we feel would be important to make it meaningful, to make it not just be words on paper, but to make it meaningful for substantive change and help with the legacy of Sonya Massey. So I give you Attorney Tony Romanucci.
Can you spell Romanucci?
I will. I'll introduce myself. Full name is Antonio, A-N-T-O-N-I-O, Romanucci, R-O-M-A-N-U-C-C-I. And thank you, members of the press, and of course the Massey family, for your strength and courage in being here. And as Ben said, my dear friend and co-counsel on so many cases, what we've been doing is fighting a fight, an uphill battle for years. And it's shameful to say that Ben and I and other people around the country have not been successful in getting nationwide legislation passed that can save lives. So we're here today to say enough is enough, and we've been saying that, but now we have to stop the buck. And if we have to start with Illinois, we will start with Illinois. But as background, Illinois took some considerable steps a couple years ago when it passed the Safety Act. It's one of the most comprehensive police reform bills that was passed by a state in the country, and that was done by the great efforts, as Ben mentioned, by Governor Pritzker, our Senator Harmon, House Representative Chris Welch, and all the other members of the House and Senate that supported the Safety Act. And as we know, it got rid of cash bail, which, as we now see the effects of it, has been very successful. But what do we now know about the Safety Act? It needs a little bit of help. It needs work. And here's why. Sean Grayson was a ticking time bomb. Second by second that this man was on the Sangamon County Sheriff's Police Force, he was a ticking time bomb. And the Safety Act failed to stop the ticking until Sean Grayson literally exploded and caused a needless life to be lost, in that of Sonya Massey. And so what we aim to do with the Sonya Massey bill is caulk the Safety Act so that a Sean Grayson does not happen again. It cannot happen. The Sonya Massey Act will stop the ticking. It will stop the explosion. So how do we do it? There are several ways in which we can fix the Safety Act so it doesn't happen again. When you consider that Sean Grayson had 2 DUI convictions, if Sean Grayson wanted to visit Canada, if he wanted to visit the beautiful cities of Toronto or Montreal, he wouldn't be allowed to do so. He couldn't cross the border, but he was able to work as a deputy sheriff in Sangamon County. You think about that. So if you're not able to visit as a tourist in Canada, why are you able to carry a gun in Sangamon County and use it in a manner that was clearly excessive and unnecessary. So we aim to do several things. Generally speaking, is we want a national database, one that Illinois can tap into, so that not only are convictions, right? The Safety Act requires a database for felony convictions and serious misdemeanors. We want it to be much more comprehensive than that. We want it to include infractions such as DUIs. We want it to include infractions as driving 101 miles per hour during a police chase. We want it to include if you use excessive force or unnecessary profane language on a citizen. We want to stop anything. We want to stop any police officer who does not deserve to wear the uniform or the badge, and certainly carry anything that's close to a deadly weapon. That's one way. The second way is we want to create a waiting period, some quiet time in between going from job to job, in order that we make it a requirement that a thorough and comprehensive background check is completed. We need to prove that the background checks were done so that none of these infractions fall through the cracks and these sheriffs are allowed to be hired. So those are two of the ways that we would aim to try and fix the Safety Act. We think those are simple but important and highly effectual fixes. There is more that we would want to propose, and as I look at my notes, are the red flags, which we kind of mentioned as to what was all over Grayson's record. So with that, we would call out to our leaders in the state to please take notice. We have a platform next week with the Democratic National Convention, and I know that we aim to bring these matters to our leaders and ensure that change will happen, because or else there will never, ever be accountability. There will never, ever be responsibility. And you will hear people like the Sangamon County Sheriff tell us that everything that he did was okay. And that's not acceptable, because this family's here is because what happened is not okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Attorney Romanucci. And wouldn't it be great if Illinois could say, as the whole nation focuses in next week at the Democratic National Convention, that there's already a proposed bill for Sonya Massey, and that we want it to pass here in the state of Illinois and then pass in the United States Congress, so no other person has to suffer a tragic fate like Malachi Summers' mother had to suffer. Attorney Romanucci talked about the warning signs. We gotta catch the warning signs. I mean, we gotta catch the warning signs before they become homicides. That's what we gotta do. That's the reality. That's why we have to have accountability on the department level. I mean, the blood is on the hands of the system as well as Sean Grayson. And so we can do better, we must do better. At this time, you're going to hear from Mr. Raymond Massey, and you know, we have Mr. James Weirburn here appearing on the Zoom because this is a heartbreaking case. And I know we've said that many times, Attorney Romanucci, Sam, Teresa, but this truly is a heartbreaking case. Heartbreaking case. Because Mr. Weirburn, Sonya's father, who had a quadruple bypass surgery on his heart in 2022, had every intention of being here today, had every intention of being at the county commission meeting last night, had put in to be able to speak. But his doctors told him with the stress that he has diagnosed him as being under because of what happened with his daughter Sonya, that he said his heart is too weak. He needs to rest and he needs to not be around stress and emotion of this tragedy. So because of this heartbreaking matter, he's going to appear by Zoom today here at this press conference. But right now, we have Mr. Raymond Massey who will make some brief remarks to you, and then we'll have Mr. Wilburn, Sonya's father, and then we'll take your questions. Mr. Massey?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name's Raymond Massey. It's R-A-Y-M-O-N-D, and it's M-A-S-S-E-Y. And I just wanted to say that we are very pleased that the sheriff resigned, however, as a first step. But I personally feel that Sonya was felled by multiple systems and multiple people. So I think that by the sheriff stepping down, it's a great first step. Our family is going through a lot right now, and I just wanted everyone to know to continue to keep our family in your thoughts and prayers. There's also a lot of people working with us, not only the world support, but we also, I want to take a moment to thank Governor Pritzker for what he's done. Also, the whole team, NAACP, ACLU, Ben Crump's team, which has been amazing. And we want justice. The sheriff did commit to, helping us. I would like to know what justice looks like for him. We are going to hold him accountable since he made that statement to the family, because we're going through a hard time right now. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. The final person you'll hear from before we take your questions will be Mr. Wilburn, and he's here. Can you hear us, Mr. Wilburn?
I can hear you.
Okay. We can hear you just fine. Please make your statement, Mr. Wilburn, whatever is on your heart.
Bluetooth disconnected.
Our family is truly hurt by the conditions that were caused by the systematic dangers and red flags that were accountable to Sean Grayson. I was the very first one to call for the resignation of the sheriff of Stanton County, Jack Campbell. I'm glad that he has been man enough to follow us forward as he should have. The buck should stop with him. He hired the folks to do this background investigation, which was woefully inadequate. This man should have never carried a bag and a gun in any county, not only Sangamon County. There is a systematic problem with how background investigations are done there. I think that the proposed changes to the safety gap, the strengthening of it, and with those changes being made after my daughter, I appreciate the people in Illinois. I appreciate the people all over the country, all over the world, who have seen this severe. People don't know what to say to us. My heart is truly broken. I had every intention of being there in person with you. But because I have congestive heart failure, the doctor didn't think I should be around the continued stress. But yet the stress is here. Like I said, I'm joyful that the
Bluetooth
sheriff did
connected.
resign, as I called for in my daughter's homegoing service. We need to see complete justice here. We don't want to look off on that Donald justice, where he was shot 17 times in the back, and the sheriff only got a little over 3 years in prison. We need to see a complete changing of the system that allowed John Grayson to kill my daughter.
Amen.
We need to start in the state of Illinois, and I think that the passing of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act on the national level can do a whole lot to correct the situation that allowed this. I want to thank Attorney Ben Crump for taking this case. I want to thank all of his staff. I want to thank the Sangamon County
Prosecutor.
the state's attorney, John Milheim. I want to thank Mary Beth. I want to thank the lead investigators, the captain, people in my hometown here, my hometown, my sheriff, my cousin who's a police chief, all of them, all of my friends who are in law enforcement and have retired from law enforcement, say that this shooting was wholly unjustifiable, unimaginable. There's no justification. I thank you all for your prayers and thoughts. Please keep this family. Continue. We need to pray until something happens. We need to push.
Yes, sir.
We need to thank organizations like Push
Yes.
and Reverend Al Sharpton's organization.
Yes.
Understand that the WNBA is going to be making some tributes to my daughter.
Yes.
I am so grateful that all of you stand with us, hold us up in prayer, pray until something happens. And I hope that John Grayson is never able to walk out of jail or prison again.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Wilburn. Hopefully you all were able to hear him clearly. We'll take some of your questions if you have some.
So, last, Mr. Romanucci explained under the legislation that he's proposing and he's working on, a DUI would be a disqualifier, and a 101 mile per hour chase would get him decertified.
Well, usually that's what I'm
And
thinking
then-
of.
and then
It'd be
you could
something that you
legally-
should check out and not just.
So we want to make those red flags. We want those to be put in the standards protocol so that everyone is aware of those. It's not that it should be an automatic disqualifier. I mean, if the legislators determine it should be, that a DUI should be a disqualifier, then maybe it should. However, these red flags cannot go unchecked. That's the problem. You have to have some sort of, and that's why we're asking for some quiet time in between positions as a sworn deputy or a sworn police officer, so that there can be confirmation that the sheriff who's making the hire acknowledges that there are red flags, and if he makes the hire, then it's his responsibility, and someone like Jack Campbell would have to resign or would have to retire, as opposed to saying that he did the right thing.
And the waiting period would look like what? If I'm at agency B and I get hired by agency C, then I stay at agency B until C checks me out, or?
It would have to be that way. It would have to be that way. Correct. There would have to be, I would say there would have to be at least a 45-day quiet period between hires.
For the last night, Sangamon County Board Chairman Andy Van Meter told me he intends to create a citizens commission to vet candidates for the sheriff's replacement. There's a lot of qualifiers that need to be met in order to hold that position from the get-go, but who should make up that committee? Who should be the ones, having a say in this process and making sure that changes on the way?
As we said, and I know Teresa Haley is a civic leader here in the community, as well as many other civic-minded citizens who care about the leadership of the community. It comes down to the county commission and, most importantly, the citizens of Sangamon County to say who should be on this civilian review board or civilian committee to help say what are going to be the qualifiers for the person who's going to be the sheriff of Sangamon County, and how does that person commit to us that we won't have another Sonya Massey, that we won't have another person getting hired because red flags were missed, and that warning signs were missed, and that things fell in between the cracks. That, I guess, is going to be the legacy of Sonya Massey. And it starts with a citizen review board being able to chime in so it's not just business as usual. When I look at Malachi and Summer, it's not business as usual. Yes, sir.
You may have heard, gotten wind of last night's meeting, about 3.5 hours of community speakers weighing in. Does that give you some sort of solace that there is that support in the community? And do you have any takeaway from what they might have said?
Well, certainly the family, as Mr. Wilburn and Mr. Massey said, I think Malachi said that at one of the press conferences, the family is very grateful for the support. They're very grateful for the community using their voice. I know there's going to be a rally tonight at Worcester Church, Pleasant Grove, at 6 p.m., a rally for justice where the community is going to come out and have their voices heard, as well as commemorate of the 1908 race riots that helped found the NAACP. But specifically to your question, it really is about getting full justice for Sonya Massey. Like Mr. Raymond Massey said about the sheriff, he gave his word that he's going to help get justice for Sonya Massey. Well, we want to see your actions. Your actions speak louder than your words. And so that's what we want to see from Sangamon County. What are going to be your actions? How do you make this wrong right? You know, is Sonya Massey worthy of the constitutional promises of American citizens that's afforded to all American citizens? That is full justice. If it was your child, what would justice look like? Well, that's the same thing Sonya Massey family wants. That's what the clarion call is to Sangamon County citizens and those who stand up for right. Yes, ma'am.
I have a few questions about the legislation. So with these infractions like DUIs and like high-speed chases, would they be reported to the database by the law enforcement agency, like the employer?
Yes, they would be reported by the law enforcement agency, as we feel like all citizen complaints, administrative complaints, should be reported to the standardized database. Because if you don't have full knowledge about who you're hiring, then you don't know what you're getting. And that's what happened supposedly with Sean Grayson. Whether or not there was anything that helped him get his job other than his qualifications, well, we don't know, right? I think that would come out later on potentially. But I think if you're going to hire someone who constitutionally has the power to use deadly force on a tax-paying citizen, then they need to know everything about that police officer before he's hired, not after.
Do you find that could potentially create some issues, like like historically, like employers, police chiefs, and sheriffs, they aren't really as keen on reporting, on their
That's the
guys.
problem.
So.
Well, Ben just said it. That's the problem we need to fix. There has to be mandatory reporting, or else this can keep happening. I mean, it's an issue. It's a problem. Illinois has been a great leader in reforms and progressive issues such as ensuring constitutional and good policing. It should continue that leadership by fixing this hole in the Safety Act. It took some time, and unfortunately it took a precious life to learn, but that's how we do it. If we don't fix it afterwards, then we're not doing our job.
Is this public interest, accessible by the public?
I don't know that I can say that right now. I don't know. I would assume that it probably cannot be, because there's a lot of collective bargaining issues that go into those issues, so I can't comment on that.
But as Attorney Ramanucci and I have seen with Tyree Nichols, you have officers leave one law enforcement agency, they have allegations of excessive force, and then they get hired by the next one. People die, and everybody say, oh, why didn't you all check before? Why didn't you know that he had been accused of brutal excessive force on an inmate prior to this? Well, nobody told us. There was no requirement that somebody had to report it. I mean, Tamir Rice, we've seen case after case where police officers were allowed to resign at one law enforcement agency and then go next door, get hired by the next law enforcement agency and kill somebody. I mean, Tony's, metaphor of ticking time bomb is real. It's only a matter of time before they end up killing or, crucially harming some citizen who had a right to make law enforcement do their job. Law enforcement report on everybody else when they're accused of stuff. But it doesn't work when it's internally. You don't report on it. What kind of sense does that make?
Are you working with any state lawmakers right now, like Senator Turner or?
Well, I know we're going to share with Senator Turner. Senator Turner has been great in her leadership, saying that she's going to try to work to remedy what happened here so it doesn't happen anywhere else in the state of Illinois. So Attorney Ramanucci is not only going to share it with Senator Turner, but we're also going to share it with the individuals at the head of the federal government, like we did with George Floyd. We're going to share it with Vice President Kamala Harris's office, as well as others who are interested in trying to get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed finally.
So we do have, by the way, Ben and I have authored a white paper. It has been updated. I have some copies with me today. I can leave those, I can go get them and leave those with you. And that will give you a general sense. It's not going to be specific, but it's going to be a lot. Actually, I go back on that. There are a lot of specific recommendations in our paper, and we continuously update it. We're probably on our 8th edit right now.
Because they keep killing people.
Right.
The Safety Act was already a very politicized piece of legislation, and with reopening it or adding to it in a way could reignite some of those political conversations around policing reform. And I wonder how you keep Sonya and Sonya's story at the front and center of that. How do you do that when you start to get into the halls of the Capitol, when you start to have those more polarized conversations?
The only thing I would say, and then Attorney Ramanucci certainly can answer, keep showing that video to the legislatures. I mean, let them see that and say, hold on, obviously what we did didn't prevent these wrongs that caused this tragic death of this innocent mother. Sometimes we forget that the law is supposed to prevent things like Sonya Massey from happening. And when it fails to prevent that, then we have to do everything in our power to say never again. I'm sorry, Tony. You get emotional.
No? Thank you. And I think that's a very fair question, because you know that up to the point where the safety bill was signed by Governor Pritzker, it was a Chicken Little world where the sky was going to fall as soon as this bill was going to be passed. And we've seen that hasn't happened. Right? In fact, I think the opposite has happened. We've seen crime in a lot of jurisdictions across Illinois actually go down. In my home county of Cook, a lot of the violent crime has gone down because of the no cash bail. So I think in terms of the comfort zone of people looking to make the Safety Act better, I think we're there. I think the sales job has already been done on the Safety Act because it speaks for itself.
What's your agenda for the DNC, and do you have plans to meet with nominees, Harris or Waltz?
Well, obviously, Vice President Harris has talked to the family at great length about it. I do understand that they're going to renew their cause for the George Floyd Justice Policing Act to be passed, and I fully expect Vice President Kamala Harris will say her name, Sonya Massey, during the Democratic National Convention. Are there any other questions?
At the county board meeting last night, multiple people mentioned that there was not enough oversight for the sheriff, for sheriff deputies, as, you know, obviously local county board officials don't have the power to kick an elected person out of office. Do you think this is part of the problem, is that we're giving law enforcement officers too much power and not having enough checks and balances against their actions?
Well, I do believe that's what the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is trying to have instituted, accountability on every level. I think you have some great county commissioners who are raising the right questions to say, we don't want anybody else innocent blood on our hands while we were on our watch. And so we thank people like Sam and other county officials who have reached out to the family and say, we're so sorry that this happened, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure it doesn't happen again. It's always about accountability, always. If there are no other questions, we will see you all tonight. We probably have some updates about this very issue tonight because we have some important meetings to go to now with the family. Thank you.
Thank you.